Jonathan Conricus, who is the spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces. Good morning, Jonathan. Thank you for your time. I want to ask good morning, the most difficult question. How does Israel wipe out Hamas on the ground? Your stated intention. How can that objective be realised?
It will be realized. We are very committed to that, and we have started the operations. We are degrading their military capabilities slowly, steadily, but surely. And as we will enhance our operations, that goal will be achieved because you see, it's a fundamentally different situation. This isn't just another round of fighting between Hamas and Israel. This is a watershed moment, a terror attack like we have never suffered before in terms of the amount of casualties. And as such, our response is going to be unlike anything before. And so will the consequences be.
Good morning, Jonathan. Lizzy here. Thank you for being with us. Look, the United Nations, senior EU figures and agencies are all concerned that there have already been breaches of international law by Israel in Gaza. I suppose the second most difficult question is how you wipe out Hamas on the ground, but while minimising civilian casualties.
Yes, I would refer the focus of said organizations and people that you spoke about, first and foremost to the systemic violations of international law by Hamas. This all started with Hamas massacring our civilians, not by mistake, on purpose, including burning, raping, mutilating, and taking hostage women, children, babies, and elderly. And it then continues with Hamas using poor Palestinians as their human shields in operations. And it continues with Hamas using the civilian infrastructure to hide behind. So I fail to understand how the primary concern is Israel and human rights. It's more, how has Hamas taken the Gaza Strip captive and is using it for its military jihadi purposes. And what we are trying to do is simply to defend ourselves and to set the situation straight for a generation to come.
As spokesperson for the IDF, what could Israel encounter on the ground during an invasion? We know a lot of people are talking about it being imminent within days. What might your forces encounter on the ground from Hamas?
A very densely populated urban area where an enemy has had the ability and time and resources to prepare the battlefield defensively, focusing mostly on tunnel warfare and what we call the subterranean dimension of warfare. Urban terrain is challenging enough as it is. British troops have learned that many times in recent times, so have the Americans, and so have we. And it's challenging enough. What Hamas has added to that complexity is the subterranean dimension, and the fact that they have no issues whatsoever to use civilians and sensitive sites like schools, mosques, and hospitals for their military purposes.
And how seriously are you watching your northern border with Lebanon? Do you think that this conflict could escalate beyond Gaza?
We're watching it very seriously, tracking the activities of Hezbollah, responding whenever Hezbollah attacks us, which they have done a few times over the last days. We are careful not to escalate the situation ourselves, but we are trying to send a strong message to Hezbollah that it would be very much not in the interest of neither Hezbollah nor the state of Lebanon if they decide to escalate the situation.
Does a ground invasion by Israel into Gaza provoke that escalation, though? That seems to be the fear of the US.
Well, I don't think that provoke is the right word. They are aggressors. This whole started with a Hamas aggression, and if it continues and develops into a Hezbollah aggression, then that is the focus. We are not the aggressors. We are defending ourselves here. And if that is the case, and if this Iranian-funded terror organization that is using Lebanon as its staging ground, if they'll attack us, then of course we will have to defend ourselves, and we will do what we have. We will use what we have, and we will do what we can in order to defend ourselves, and of course change the situation for the better for generations to come, and not continue constantly living under the threat of Iranian proxies at our doorsteps.
So in terms of duration, how long does a ground invasion take, do you think, in Gaza?
It's definitely not a short affair because it's a complex area. We would, of course, aspire to conduct military operations fast, quick, and decisive in order to minimize the risk for casualties, and including civilian ones, and to be able to return our country to a normal state of affairs. We are officially at war with all of the economic repercussions and the civil repercussions, the social ones. We would like to do that as swiftly as possible, but I think that on the balance between swift and thorough, we will prepare the thorough and to get the job done and fundamentally change the situation for future generations here.
What are the Israeli options to counter the tactics of holding hostages in the tunnels and using them as human shields?
Extremely challenging, and we will have to be very creative in order to get our hostages out. It's a situation where I do not envy the commanders on the ground and the people that will be trying to get our hostages out. For sure, Hamas will do everything that they can in order to leverage these poor hostages, these women, children, elderly, and babies that they've taken into Gaza. And unfortunately, we cannot anticipate anything but the cruelest of tactics from Hamas.
And are those Palestinian civilians who are being asked to leave going to be allowed to return to Gaza after they've left?
I don't know. And I don't know that anybody is being asked to leave. The only thing that has happened so far from our perspective is that we have asked Palestinians inside the Gaza Strip to relocate from the north to the south out of a consideration for their safety. And we want the area to be with as little civilian population as possible so that they won't get affected by the warfare. It's simply safer to be in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and that's why we have advertised our intentions ahead of time, which militarily doesn't make a lot of sense. It exposes us to the enemy understanding what we're going to do or having a better understanding. But we've done that, jeopardizing a bit of our own security in order to alleviate the humanitarian situation. Sadly, that's being used by Hamas, and Hamas is actively undermining the ability of these Palestinian citizens, civilians, to evacuate for their own safety. They've put up roadblocks and they have confiscated cars and threatened and used violence, all in an effort to have their human shields readily by so that they can use them in the fighting against us.
How much support currently are you getting from the US? Obviously, there are warships and assets positioned off the coast. How much support are you getting from the US?
We are getting complete support from the political down to the strategic and the military level. The level of coordination, sharing of intelligence, planning, and trust is outstanding. The logistics supplies have already started, which are very important, the replenishment of munitions and defensive systems. And we are well coordinated, very well coordinated when it comes to the different scenarios and how we should respond to different types of aggression in the region. But I think it's very important to emphasize that politically, the United States unequivocally, the administration headed by the president and then down through the Secretary of State, etc., are clearly, unequivocally behind Israel. And I want to be clear, we don't want a single American to do any fighting on our behalf. We will do the fighting by ourselves and we will beat our enemies by ourselves. It is the materiel, the support, the replenishment of munitions that are important, and of course the diplomatic support that we are very aware that we will need in the future.
How prepared, finally, is Israel for a wider conflict? Is that something that you are preparing for now?
We are prepared and we have been prepared, but it's not something that we seek. We are a peace-loving country that wants to thrive and continue to live here for hundreds of generations. And war isn't what we're looking for, but war was forced upon us by a bloodthirsty terrorist organization of subhumans that perpetrated some of the worst atrocities seen in recent times. We're responding to that, and we will rectify the situation and create a better future for ourselves and for our children.
Jonathan Conricus, spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces, thank you so much for joining us here on Bloomberg Radio and for giving us some of your time.